Bitcoin ETF news continue rolling in. Today we're going to be talking about BlackRock actually putting their money where their mouth is. You guys don't want to miss it. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. Before we get started, I want to thank our sponsor, and that is Tangem. Go over and visit their website, Tangem.com. This is one of the best self-custody wallets out there. And the cool thing is they have a really slick app. You guys can use that. One thing you want to do is just go over to the website, click on that Get Tangem, and it's going to take you to this page right here. This gets you into the 3-card set, fully available. That's the one that you want because it's going to give you that a little bit of an extra value in terms of a backup. So check it out. Use our link down below. It does help the channel. All right, so a couple of things I want to hit on here today. Basically, the article talking about the 10 million Bitcoin purchase by BlackRock that would be pushed into the fund today on January 5th, and that there would be another 200 million coming into the market once the fund gets approved. So that does show a lot of commitment, I think, in these markets. But more importantly, I think what this might show is that they're starting to double down on this. So much so that breaking news today is this right here. BlackRock actually has 2 billion lined up for this ETF. So, I mean, this is pretty significant. And this came in from Matthew Sigel, he's been on our show from VanEck, talking about the potential futures here, kind of outpacing a little bit of what's been happening in the market. This came from, of course, on a Twitter space with Eric Balchunas and Eleanor Terrett. Don't know if that's fully accurate, but the fact that they're making these statements right now, these are the best analysts out there when it comes to ETFs, so I do trust most of these guys on where this is going. Eleanor Terrett also hit on a tweet here talking about the Bitcoin spots, some filings that will most likely get amended. This is coming on the 11th hour. These are around phone calls concerning certain comments on the S1's possible launch dates. What does this mean? What this tells me is that if they were going to deny this, these kinds of antics right here wouldn't be happening. This is trying to groom the content and the filings to the perfect letter of the law for the SEC to get this done. And I think this is only showing more additional faith that this is coming. And remember, it's January 5th. January 8th is our day. That's the one we feel like it's going to happen. The 10th, of course, is the deadline. So all that's still in line. Here's Gasparino talking about guidance on the SEC decision on Bitcoin. Is that it's coming hopefully next week. Hopefully next week is an interesting statement here because that is a little bit more loose than what I would have expected here. This is according to one issuer. Keep in mind that this may be significantly different timetables for decisions on applications based on when they were filed. So what he's talking about there is that some may not necessarily get approved next week because of their timing. And I would agree with that, but I think the majors are really set in stone, and pretty much as Scaramucci was saying on Twitter the other day, that this is done. Imminent decision sends Bitcoin market into a frenzy. We've already seen movement on Bitcoin dramatically. And of course, here's the final deadline dates right there, 21 shares, the 10th. BlackRock technically has the 15th of March on their deadline. Bitwise coming in on there. But you can kind of see if they approve, the likelihood is all of these that fall into the S1 filings being accurate, getting approved at the same time that 21 shares. I don't think that 21 shares would be the one that only gets the approval based on its deadline going forward. So still a big one for sure. Can Wall Street tame the Bitcoin beast as ETFs near approval? I think the key here with some of this, and I want to get into the article itself, is this is Anthony Pompliano talking about the outsized gains that came along with strong moves to the downside. And what he's kind of talking about here is, do we see an interesting pump and then a retrace? I am more on the boat of that Bitcoin becomes a bit more stable over the coming months and years and much less volatile in these ETFs, especially around the side of it. And again, it all depends on how much of the non-crypto market comes into the space, because remember, this is going to be the gateway drug for a lot of people getting into crypto for the first time. They're not going to necessarily go to Coinbase, but at the same time, I still believe that this demographic shift that has occurred here in the, well, really worldwide, is that the Gen Z, millennials, and even Gen Alpha to a certain extent, they're the ones that are really going to drive this. And I don't think they're going to buy spot. I think or spot ETFs. I think they're going to be going into these markets and going direct exposure. So a couple other things here. He talked about speculating that U.S. Securities Exchange could come as soon as January 5th or as late as January 9th. Yeah, of course. I think everybody's there. Tether also had some minting activity, which is an imminent ETF approval, which I'm kind of on that fence with Tether because they have done this before. There has been some history here that I would agree with to a certain extent that is definitely happening. VanEck here on a couple of tweets, and I'll get into some tweets here. And I've got a couple of clips of Kevin O'Leary. You guys are going to love this, so stick around for this one. But we're not Bitcoin tourists at VanEck. We're in for the long haul. That's why we made an additional 10K donation and signed a pledge to donate 5% of our Bitcoin ETF profits, if approved, to support Bitcoin core devs. I think that's good. And I like the fact that, mainstream Wall Street is really starting to commit. And that's the difference, I think, this cycle than what it has been in the past. I mean, institutional adoption has always been kind of at the forefront, but I think really now they're actually starting to walk the walk. All right, one more tweet here from Ryan Selkis coming over from Masari. And a thing that people are missing about the ETF is that it's crossed the Rubicon moment, which simply means that crypto is going to have a long-awaited wedge into mainstream global finance. And this is something we talk about quite a bit. That won't happen, though, unless mass crypto adoption is inevitable with this step. And so it's just a question of time horizon. Back to my point is that I think there's a bit of a divided front in the finance markets right now. And many people would say, well, the boomers, that's where all the liquidity is. I would argue that. I think the liquidity is not equal to the penny, but definitely has a good challenge from millennials and what the Gen Z have as a potential access to liquidity into these markets in terms of adoption. So I think it's going to be a bit of a struggle, but the advantage is that the boomers who maybe don't have exposure, this will be their first step into trying it. Much like, Facebook and social media, it was their first step into trying it, and then they just got better at using the platform. I think that will happen, and they'll start to explore other crypto projects out there. I want to jump over to a couple of clips here. Let's go to this first one. This is Kevin O'Leary talking about that the SEC might jettison this idea. Listen in.
10th is the big date when the SEC and Gensler are going to decide if they're going to issue that license for an ETF. But I want to warn everybody of something here. I'm in the camp that says he won't do it. He's got a mandate that'll be for another 18 months. In other words, if you're an institution and you're going to park $1 billion somewhere, you got to have a compliant exchange. And that's not Coinbase because they're being sued by Gensler too. And remember, everybody, and this is crucial to the long-term prognosis of Bitcoin and crypto, only 38% of it is held in North America. The rest is all around the world. So the big question is, where are the billions going to go that used to be on Binance? And the answer is what occurred last month in Abu Dhabi, the launch of the M2 exchange backed by sovereign wealth. The largest of its kind in terms of financial backing,
Not yet.
tied to behemoth institutions. That's very good news.
All right, so that's Kevin O'Leary, and I would say this, that O'Leary is a good name because you have to be leery of O'Leary. And here's the reason why. Listen to this next clip.
I'm at the launch of M2. Now, what is M2? Where is the new home of Bitcoin and every other digital currency? That's right, it's M2. M2. I came here because I'm so interested in this, and the guys here get it. I am going to invest in this exchange, 100%.
All right, so I mean, this gets a little bit sketch is the best word for it, in the sense of saying it one way, that this is not going to happen. These exchanges aren't ready. Coinbase is being sued by the SEC. And oh, by the way, I've got an exchange over here I can peddle you, and I'm investing in it as well. So this is where these interests get into a problem, I think, in crypto. So remember, you got to do the research, dive in a little deeper. Don't go with the narrative on top. Anyway, a couple other things that are happening right there, and that is the Bitcoin halving. This will be one of the other narratives that is going to start to paint out here within 2024. And I want you to think about narratives, because narratives have been the core of where, one, the market moves, and two, the future starts to happen. And what I mean by that is, whether or not you believe in the halving or not, the point is that there's a lot of crypto OGs and crypto natives that do think this is still a potential impact on the market. Now, myself, I'm feeling a little bit more in the sense that it's going to have a less of an impact if, in fact, we get an ETF approval and we get continued impressions on potential other ETFs that could hit the market as well. And that includes ETH. ETH will be the other one that I think is also going to be a bigger narrative going forward, especially around ETFs. So what does that mean? That means that we are going to continue to see a lot of altcoin movement in the year ahead. Obviously, the macro will still have major pressure, and it doesn't mean this is a slam dunk still yet on the ETH ETFs or the Bitcoin ETFs. We're still dealing with the SEC. So you have to take those things into consideration. All right, so I'm going to go out here with this last little piece here on the macro impact in the markets. This is coming in from GR Dector. And if you don't follow Genevieve, check her out because they do a great job on her Twitter account here. I want to look at a couple of things here. U.S. services growth slows and nears contraction. So services in general, these are jobs. This is one of the sectors that I follow heavily. Job growth in that is most likely going to slow with a critical component around consumer spending. If we do get, in fact, slowing consumer spending, this is one of those things that could continue to cause a little bit more pressure, which is, remember, a potential for the Fed to come in and actually do the pivot that is required. Because if we don't see pressure on the, remember, now S&P has started to trail off. Yes, that has maybe started to adjust. Is that leading into these alternative assets, or are we in a potential doorstep entry into a market that might be taking on an actual recession? And if that does occur in the next 60 to 90 days, that is the big catalyst that could start the reversal and pivot of the Fed fund rate. And that, myself, is what I'm looking for, because this could be a big indicator in how we see the market explode. So timing really interesting here. It's kind of like following a timeline or a rollout of a project. You look at ETF, what's going to come right after that? Obviously the halving. Then you've got situations potentially brewing with ETH, but you have all this macro pressure coming in on it as well. So man, this is just a very interesting time in terms of the deviation. Critical to watch right now, the services sector, for it accounts for 75% of the U.S. economy. And I would agree with her. And this research is that this is one that is going to be critical to keep an eye on going forward. If you guys are not part of the Diamond Circle, make sure and jump in right now. It's a great place to get additional content and more podcasts. If you're not following me on X, do that right now. It's just @PaulBaron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.